Hello, hopefully everyone has enjoyed watching my video and Joe's series. I want to go through my kind of post-trip thoughts and do a quick recap. No, I've said it before, but say it again. Thanks again to Harlan at Red Lake Outfitters for putting everything together. If you need an outfitting service in the Woodland, Caribou area, Harlan was top-notch. He was a super helpful guy, has great equipment, and I really appreciate the help he gave us. And of course, thanks to Joe for putting up with me. So I have a list here. I'm going to just go down. Three major things I want to go over is safety, gear, and then a few things that I'd change up or some of my afterthoughts. So safety. So a couple of things to think about that I think to just double check and reinforce is this park is in the middle of nowhere. You are, a good 45 to 50 minute flight from the nearest city. If you drive in, it's like a 2-hour drive on the logging road before you get to the first lake. So it is in the middle of nowhere. This is like, you need to have your stuff dialed in. You need to know what you're doing. I would not take a person who's never camped before or has limited experience and throw them in the middle of this. This is first class wilderness area, and what you get for that is the solitude, and you get the epic fishing you saw. So it's definitely worth it. Just take some precautions. You saw probably in my video where there was a lure that got stuck in my leg. So that's probably, I was a little bit gun shy the rest of the video, or rest of the trip after that, because I was being super careful with that. There's one time in Joe's video too where he's pulling the fish in and it like flops up and it smacks him in the head. The tail does. That could have easily been the lure got stuck in his ear, his face, eye, who knows what. So probably one of your most dangerous things out there is your fish hooks. Be super diligent and careful with that. I started after I was originally taking the fish and landing them in the boat and then dealing with them. Well, the problem is in those pack boats is your legs are straight out in front of you. Well, what happened? Well, sure enough, it got stuck in my leg when it was flopping around. The walleyes are like armored. They have barbs in their gills. They have barbs on their top, so they're really hard to, like, you can't just grab them. So you gotta be careful. So after that, I was landing all the fish on the side of the boat, so that way I was protected at least somewhat by the boat versus having the fish hook come over and get me in the leg again. So be very careful. Eye pro, yeah, definitely eye protection all the time when fishing. Try to be really diligent about that. The hooks definitely got me a little spooked. Because you're so remote, especially if you're doing a fly-in trip, it's probably not a bad idea to have at least one, probably two satellite devices. I had my inReach, which you saw in my video, and then you saw in Joe's video a couple of times where we were talking on the sat phone. So Harlan, the outfitter, gave us the sat phone. The inReach I purchased. Huge fan of the inReach. If you watch my video in the Sierras, you'll see where it potentially saved my life. So I think you are being irresponsible, honestly, if you're going that far into the backcountry to not bring some type of satellite device. So big fan of those. It's worth the $12 a month, subscription fee or whatever it is. My life's worth more than $12 a month. So let's talk about gear for a bit. So when Joe and I had a whole bunch of free time for like 2.5 days, we sat around and went, what would we do different about this trip? So we came up with a list. I ended up typing it up in an email on my phone and then sending it to myself, and it just stayed on my phone. And I pulled that back up, and I'm going to go down things we would change. First was our backpacks. So the Mech Log Deluxe worked perfect. No complaints. Awesome pack. Bulletproof. Joe's is like really old. It's starting to fade and fall apart, but he's had that thing for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, something like that, and it's got some wear to it. So the bags worked great, but we double carried everything, so it was silly to have everything crammed in that one backpack. I think what would have been nice since we double carried is if we had a small 10 to 15 liter like small day pack. I know they make little fly fishing packs that are like little backpacks, roll top. They're like resistant to fish hooks, so something like that would be nice when we're double carrying, doing day hikes, things like that. I would probably do that. And the other thing too, from a weight distribution standpoint, is if I had a little backpack that had, let's say, 10 pounds of gear in it, some like my rain gear, my some basic food, stuff like that, I think having 10 pounds put at the very front of the canoe could have made a big difference in weight balance, because the front of that canoe was acting like a sail. If I was trying to go at a diagonal to the wind, it was just immediately getting flopped over. So small bag, if you're going to be double carrying, could be helpful. One thing I always say is food variety. I always get tired of eating the same stuff. I actually, for the first time in my life ever on a trip, got tired of eating chocolate, which I didn't think was humanly possible. But if all you eat is chocolate for a day and a half, because that's all we had left, your stomach is going to start doing some weird stuff. So more food variety. I felt like I did pretty good with my meals, but more variety in snacks, more textures, more flavors. Just did a backpacking trip, and gummy bears was a huge hit. So just different varieties and stuff like that. Let's see, sun gloves. I've bought those since then, like kind of fingerless sun gloves. I say that in the video. Would have been a huge thing. The back of my hands were burnt and peeling for like at least 2 or 3 weeks after the trip. I put sunscreen on constantly, waterproof, 80 plus whatever, and my hands were getting burnt just because they're in the water, they're on the paddle. Sun gloves was big. Joe didn't have that problem, but I'm pretty darn pale. It would be nice to have a proper like fish glove. Maybe I'm just a wimp or something, but the frickin' walleye, I had a couple of them. They have these barbs on their gills. They're just like full of gunk and bacteria, and they stab you in your finger, and your finger swells up. It'd be nice to have like a real glove to put on, be able to grab them. They're slimy too, especially the pike, to be able to hold on to them and remove the hooks properly. So I think an actual fish glove would be nice. My tent worked out okay. The Hilberg Enon. It's kind of a wider tent. Joe's is really, really small. I mean, his is like a glorified bivy sack, really. And so I would usually have to take the bigger, nicer spot because my tent took up more room. So it would be nice to have a smaller tent. I think his is pretty good, the little freestanding Big Agnes one. So my tent worked out okay. The ground's pretty shallow, so putting stakes in was challenging. Having more of a freestanding tent would be nice. Better snips. You saw on my vest I had the little snippers and I had the pliers. The snippers worked great, but after about like day 4 or 5 of cutting braid, they started to not work quite as well. So I would like get something a little bit more high quality. I think those are like $10. They're pretty cheap. I do like it on the pull out thing where you can let go and they come back. That was awesome. I just get better ones. Sorry for the audio on my GoPro. My GoPro is probably 5 years old now, so it's kind of an older one. The audio is kind of so-so. I fixed some of it in post, but it's not the best. So next time, get a better GoPro, Kyle. Let's see what else to have. The tarp lines, I have them set up on Pressix. I think I showed it in my video once. Works great. It's really quick. I need to change up the Pressix cord line to a different line because when they're both the same type of cord, they seem to kind of lock up on each other, and I can't get them to undo each other. So the Pressix get too tight, and they're hard to undo. So I got to play with the lines a little bit. That's on my to-do list. On a slower trip like this, one thing we were killing for, especially when we had slow days, was a hammock. You sit in that freaking canoe seat and go like this all day long, and then you sit in that little REI camp chair thing, and I'll tell you what, nothing would have been nicer than to have a hammock. So I have a really lightweight one. It's like comes in at about 1 pound 4 ounces with all the suspension and stuff. I made it myself a couple years ago. It's really nice to have. So I think if I were going to bring one more luxury thing, it would be that. Water filtration. The Sawyer Squeeze Mini I used works okay. The flow rate is really annoying. I'd probably do the one Joe had, which is the Katadine something or other. The only problem with that one is you can't really back flush it. You have to like shake it to get it cleared. And Joe kind of goes through those on a regular basis just because you can't back flush them the best. So I'm not sure. There needs to be a product somewhere in the middle between a higher flow rate, easier to back flush. I know the big Sawyer is a little bit better, but anyways, just keep looking. Small cup. It'd be nice to have. I have one like a squishy bowl or a titanium cup. I got tired of just drinking out of the squeezing the water bottle with the Sawyer on it. That just got annoying after a while. It was nice to just have a cup, throw some fruit punch in it or whatever, and drink that. Book. I had one book on my phone, which we read, John Muir's My Summer in the Sierra, which worked out great. I'm glad I had something to read, but maybe next time I'll download 1 or 2 more books just so I have something to read, lay in the hammock and read. That would have been a huge time passer. That would have been awesome. Paper and pen. Joe had a Sharpie. It was nice having the pen when I was looking at stuff on my phone, like my airplane number, my Enterprise rent-a-car agreement number. I had to take that and then type it into the InReach to send to my wife and be like, hey, can you get this all fixed? So it was nice that he had a Sharpie that I was able to write down on the back of like a map or permit all those numbers, and then able to text them in. So from now on, I'm going to carry a pen and like a scrap piece of paper, just so I can write down my thoughts. I can journal. You know, pens don't run out of battery power, so I'm going to carry that. I've also needed pens at the start of trailheads before to fill out permits. Those are always seem to be gone, and like so I'm going to start carrying a pen with me. Anyways, alcohol stove. What was I going to say about that? Oh, it worked fine. The little bottle of alcohol I used ran fine for all 9 days, so you don't really need much there. That worked pretty good. One thing I would bring as a backup is 2 titanium skewer stakes that can go through my wind screen that goes around my pot, just so I could use it as a twig stove too. You put the tent pegs through, and then the pot sits up higher, and you can use it like a twig stove. So it works pretty good. So those are some of the just post random thoughts we had after the trip. So hopefully that helps. If you want more detailed info on my gear, check out my gear video I shot a couple weeks ago, or I guess months ago now. Other than that, everything worked out really good. Yeah, more food variety always comes up as a thing. A couple of things that I liked the absolute best, just like top 4 things I liked the best. One was the vest. Having the life vest with pockets, awesome. That thing was awesome. I loved wearing it. It's nice. I had the pliers right there, had the snips right there. There's no fumbling around. It's nice having all those, and they're all on strings, so they wouldn't fall over or fall out. That was helpful. I kept a little box of lures in the pocket right here, so I could change out 3-4 different types of lures without having to carry around the big box or get it out of my main pack. That was awesome. Really like the Fall Raven pants I had. Those are the Keb Trekking Light, I want to say, something like that. Joe had bought the same pair, different color. His turned black essentially. They are a lighter fabric than the G1000. They're like a G1000 Light, I think is what they're called. And they started to have just a titch bit of wear to them. So I've re-waxed mine, and they look fine now. But it is a thinner fabric. It is a summer weight pant, I would say. So it's not quite as burly as the regular G1000. Probably one of the most important pieces of gear on the last day was definitely the tarp. We call it Old Blue. You probably heard us screaming that in the video. That's the name of the tarp, is Old Blue, because at one point in time it was blue, and now it's kind of like this gross color because of all the smoke it's had on it from various campfires. But Old Blue held up great. Definitely a lifesaver anytime you got a group and in a rainy environment. You're silly not to carry a tarp like that. I made that tarp myself many years ago. Used some internet instructions and my mom's sewing machine, and it's held up just fine. And final thing that I think was a critical piece of gear was my hat. You can laugh at that thing all you want, but that hat is sexy and attractive. The nice thing about it is my ears didn't burn, the back of my neck didn't burn. It was great sun protection. When it was raining, it had offered good protection on my head too. So it's really important, I think, to try to avoid sun damage as much as possible. So I think that hat worked out great. I would definitely use it again in the future. Final thoughts on the park is the park was awesome. It was a really, really cool environment. I'm super glad we were able to do that. Doing the fly-in part was cool. You know, you go from a little town to the middle of nowhere in 40 minutes. It's pretty neat. The park is huge. I think it's, you know, one heck of an opportunity to be able to go out there and paddle it and do it all. So full of life. The bug life was just, I say it in the video, but it was just crazy. The one night, I'll never forget on Mexican Hat, where the mosquitoes were so loud. It's just like this humming buzz. It was just fascinating. So yeah, so the park is something else. This is not my last video of the summer. I've gone on 2 or 3 kind of backpacking adventures since out here in California since the Woodland Caribou trip. Give me a couple of weeks. I'll get all this edited and I'll start trying to release some. So hopefully people like that. If you got any questions about the gear or any of my thoughts I went over here, please let me know. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.